Listen carefully. You are not here by accident. You are not alive because things worked out. You are alive because something tried to remove you and failed. There was a moment, maybe more than one, where your life could have ended. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, literally. An accident that should have taken you. An illness that made no logical sense to survive. A decision you almost made in a moment of exhaustion. A situation where the odds were not in your favor. And yet, you are still breathing. That alone tells a story most people will never understand. Survival is not random. Preservation is not coincidence. If you are watching this and something in your chest feels heavy, if you have felt isolated, misunderstood, or separated from the world, this message is not random. This message found you. Before we go any further, do something intentional, not for me, but for your own spirit. Comment below, "I am chosen." Then, like this video and subscribe, because this space exists for those who were preserved for a reason. Now listen closely. Your loneliness is not abandonment. It is containment. When something carries value, it is removed from open access. Your isolation is not punishment. It is protection. There are environments you were pulled out of not because you were weak, but because staying would have destroyed what you carry. Death came close, but it was not permitted. That is not poetry. That is authority. Something placed a boundary around you when you were unaware, a silent intervention when you had no strength left to ask for one. That is why your path feels narrow. That is why your life feels quiet compared to others. That is why connections fall away without explanation. You were not meant to be easily accessed. You were not meant to be consumed by noise, chaos, or average outcomes. What you are carrying requires distance, refinement, and time. Most people confuse isolation with rejection, but chosen ones recognize it as preparation. You are being preserved because what comes next demands clarity, discernment, and strength that cannot be developed in crowded spaces. The loneliness is shaping you. The silence is calibrating you. The separation is teaching you how to hear what others cannot. Nothing tried to end you without reason, and nothing spared you without intention. You are still here because there is more ahead than behind, more purpose than pain, and more unfolding than you can currently see. Now, let's dive deeper. Point 1. When death approaches the chosen, it is never random. There are lives that unfold quietly, untouched by extremes, moving from beginning to end without interruption, lives that drift gently along familiar paths and never brush against the edge of finality. And then there are lives like yours, lives that encounter edges early, lives that are introduced to the thinning of the air long before they understand why. Moments arrive where time slows, where instinct sharpens, and where something almost ends. The body survives, yes, but the soul remembers. It remembers the stillness. It remembers the closeness. It remembers how near the line truly was. Death does not wander aimlessly. It does not act on impulse. It moves with precision. It follows openings. It studies weakness, timing, and circumstance. And yet in your story, something intervened. Not dramatically, not loudly, no spectacle, just firmly. A door closed where there should have been an exit. A pause inserted where finality was expected. An interruption so subtle that only those who have lived it recognize its weight. This is the first mark of the chosen path. Survival that feels undeserved. Continuation that feels uncanny. A lingering sense that the outcome should have been different. You didn't overpower death. You didn't escape it through strength or cleverness. You outlasted it because permission was denied. The thread was not cut. The moment did not belong to you yet. And because of that, something changed. From that point forward, life stopped feeling ordinary. Even in silence, you sense it. Even in routine, there is a quiet gravity. A knowing without words. You feel watched over, but not in comfort, more in responsibility, as if your presence itself carries an unfinished assignment. This is why your intuition feels sharpened, why loneliness visits often, why crowds feel distant. You're living on borrowed continuation, not as punishment, but as purpose. Something was meant to be interrupted, something was meant to be preserved, and the continuation was you. You are here because your story was not complete, because your awareness, your endurance, and your quiet strength still have work to do. Death came close enough to leave an imprint, but not close enough to claim you. And that proximity changed you forever. It marked you as someone who walks forward carrying unseen weight, moving through life with the subtle awareness that every breath is intentional, not accidental, not random, chosen. Point 2. Why survival is followed by isolation, not celebration. After survival, most expect reward, relief, reintegration, and applause from the world for having endured what should have broken them. But that is not what happens to the chosen. Because what you survived was not merely an event. It was a compression, a narrowing of the soul under pressure. And when pressure releases too quickly, fractures occur. Instead of noise returning, the world becomes quieter. Familiar connections fade without conflict. Laughter feels distant, not painful, just strangely irrelevant. The constant pull of conversations, expectations, and demands recedes. This is not failure. This is containment. When something rare survives extreme force, it is not rushed back into circulation. It is stabilized. It is placed somewhere still so its structure can hold. Isolation is not the absence of love. It is the absence of interference. Your nervous system had been running in survival mode for too long, alert to threat, betrayal, and instability. It needed recalibration. Your spirit had been operating outside the body, braced, vigilant, and fragmented by necessity. It needed room to settle back in, slowly, safely, without being startled by the noise of other people's emotions, projections, and agendas. Too many voices at once would have fractured what was healing, so the field around you thinned. People drifted without explanation. Invitations stopped arriving. Opportunities paused mid-motion. Time itself seemed to slow, stretching days into long, quiet intervals where nothing appeared to move forward. This is how protection feels from the inside. It does not feel dramatic. It feels empty. It feels like nothing is happening. But something very specific is happening. Your system is learning what peace feels like without danger attached to it. Your mind is relearning silence without anticipating loss. Your identity is shedding roles that were built only to survive, not to last. In this phase, you are not meant to perform, prove, or pursue. You are meant to remain intact. The stillness is doing work you cannot see yet. It is reorganizing priorities, restoring internal rhythms, and sealing cracks that only silence can reach. When the time comes to re-enter the world, it will not be as someone seeking connection to fill a void, but as someone complete enough to choose alignment. Until then, you are not forgotten. You are being preserved without distraction. Point 3. Loneliness as a spiritual firewall. Loneliness is often misunderstood because it wears the same surface symptoms as abandonment, yet the origin is entirely different. Abandonment wounds you, fractures your sense of worth, and leaves behind a hollow ache that begs to be filled by anything willing to distract you from the pain. Protective loneliness does the opposite. It does not hollow you out. It concentrates you. It does not scatter your energy. It gathers it inward. The loneliness you are experiencing does not drain you completely. It sharpens you. It presses your awareness inward until you begin to hear thoughts you once drowned out with noise, people, obligations, and emotional compromises. It forces introspection, not as punishment, but as refinement. This is how you know it is not rejection. It does not leave you weaker after reflection. It leaves you clearer. This loneliness removes external influence so your internal signal can stabilize. It prevents entanglement before you are strong enough to choose consciously. It blocks premature bonds that would anchor you to versions of yourself that are still unfinished. At this stage, connection would not heal you. It would dilute you. If you were surrounded during this phase, you would be fragmented, pulled in too many emotional directions, and shaped by expectations that are not aligned with who you are becoming. If you were adored right now, you would be influenced, subtly molded by the need to maintain that approval. So instead, you are given just enough distance to remain sovereign, alone enough to hear yourself think without interference, alone enough to notice recurring patterns in your behavior, your thoughts, and your emotional triggers, alone enough to recognize truth without persuasion, without validation, without someone else's interpretation layered on top of your own. This is where discernment is forged. This is where self-trust is rebuilt quietly, without applause. This is not isolation meant to break you. It is separation designed to protect what is forming beneath the surface. Think of it as a firewall, silent, unseen, and misunderstood by those who do not need it. It does not announce itself. It does not explain itself. It simply blocks what would corrupt the process while allowing what strengthens you to pass through. Invisible, quiet, effective. Point 4. The psychological shift after near-end experiences. After death brushes past you, something fundamental reorganizes at a level deeper than thought, deeper than language, deeper than explanation. You may not have words for it, but you feel it in the way your nervous system responds to the world. The tolerance for shallow engagement dissolves almost overnight. Conversations that once felt harmless now feel draining. Social rituals that rely on masks, posturing, and performance begin to exhaust you. Your patience for noise shortens, not because you have become cold, but because your system has learned the cost of attention. This is not arrogance, and it is not superiority. It is alignment. Your psyche has recalibrated itself around significance. When you have stood close enough to the edge of existence to feel how thin the boundary truly is, you stop spending energy on what does not matter. The illusion of endless time collapses, and with it collapses the desire to scatter yourself across meaningless moments. Your mind becomes selective, not judgmental. Your attention becomes sacred, not withdrawn. You are no longer interested in being everywhere, knowing everyone, or reacting to everything. You are interested in what is real, what is essential, what is alive beneath appearances. This internal shift often creates distance from others, not because you reject them, but because your internal compass has quietly changed direction. The paths you once shared no longer align, and forcing yourself to walk them now feels like self-betrayal. You are no longer walking towards stimulation, validation, or distraction. You are walking toward meaning, depth, and coherence. This can feel lonely at first, because fewer people are willing to slow down enough to meet you there. But this solitude is not emptiness. It is spaciousness. It is the quiet that follows survival, the silence that comes after realizing you are still here for a reason. You begin to listen more carefully, speak more deliberately, and choose more consciously. Life stops being something you rush through and becomes something you inhabit. And in that inhabiting, you are no longer ruled by fear of loss, because you have already touched it. What remains is clarity. What remains is presence. What remains is a life shaped not by habit, but by meaning. Point 5. The protection phase feels like suspension. One of the hardest truths for the chosen is that protection feels indistinguishable from stagnation, because from the outside, nothing appears to be happening, while on the inside, everything is being recalibrated. Life feels paused, as if an unseen hand has pressed a button and held it there longer than expected. Progress seems delayed, and in quiet moments you may question why others appear to be moving forward while you remain in the same place, watching time pass. But this waiting is not inactivity, and it is not punishment. It is integration. What you have endured could not simply pass through you and leave you unchanged. Your nervous system, your discernment, and your inner compass all require time to absorb what you survived and translate it into wisdom that cannot be shaken. The silence you're in now is where those lessons are being sealed into you, not as memories, but as instincts. Rushing this phase would dilute its power. If the next door opened too soon, you would walk through it carrying unresolved weight, repeating old patterns under new circumstances. So time stretches. Days feel repetitive. Conversations feel minimal. External rewards feel distant. Growth becomes invisible because it is no longer loud or performative. It is structural. This is how depth forms. This is how inner authority develops without needing validation. You are learning how to exist without grasping, how to remain steady without applause, and how to trust yourself when there is no external confirmation that you are on the right path. Protection often looks like isolation, because isolation removes interference. It limits distractions, attachments, and influences that could distort what is being built within you. What feels like being held back is actually being held together. Your energy is being stabilized, so it does not leak into the wrong places. Your perception is being sharpened, so you no longer confuse urgency with alignment. And when the release finally comes, it will not arrive gradually. It will arrive decisively. Opportunities will converge. Momentum will return. Movement will feel sudden, even shocking to those who assume nothing was happening. But you will know the truth. You will recognize that the stillness was not a void, but a womb, and that everything you needed was being assembled quietly, piece by piece. The pause ends only when you are complete enough to carry what is coming without abandoning yourself, without shrinking, without losing the clarity you earned in the waiting. Point 6. Why most people cannot walk with you through this phase. Not everyone is meant to accompany you through becoming. Some people are companions for chapters, not transformations. And this truth often reveals itself only when growth demands silence, restraint, and inner restructuring. During periods of protection, compatibility narrows by necessity. Emotional access becomes selective, not out of arrogance or coldness, but because your inner architecture is changing. What once felt natural may now feel intrusive. What once felt comforting may now feel heavy. This shift can feel painful. It can feel like loss, like something is being taken from you without explanation. But it is not loss. It is filtration. It is the quiet intelligence of life, removing what cannot pass through the next threshold with you. Anyone who remains close during this phase would inevitably influence your formation. Their words, expectations, wounds, and unresolved fears would shape how you interpret yourself and the world. And not all influence is safe during becoming. Some people love you, yet only know how to relate to the version of you that needed them. Others mean well, yet unconsciously resist your evolution because it disrupts the balance they relied on. Those who leave are not being punished. They are being spared from a path they cannot understand, a terrain that would only confuse or exhaust them. And you are being spared from carrying weight that is not yours to bear. You are not required to translate your growth into language that makes others comfortable. You are not meant to drag familiar connections into unfamiliar territory. This separation is not rejection. It is design, it is precision, it is protection operating without drama. One day you will look back and realize that what felt like abandonment was actually alignment, and what felt like loneliness was the space required for something truer to take shape within you. Point 7. Death failed. Because your presence has purpose. The final truth settles slowly. Death did not fail because you were lucky. It failed because your existence disrupts something unseen. Your awareness alters environments. Your calm stabilizes others. Your insight will one day arrive exactly when someone else is standing where you once stood. This is how preservation works. Those who survive carry keys, not loud ones, quiet ones, keys forged through endurance. Your loneliness is not an ending, it is the final seal before emergence. When the time comes, you will not need to force your place. It will open naturally. Until then, remain still, remain observant, remain intact. You are not forgotten. You are being held,